London calling to the faraway town. That will always stick there. A battle come down. London.
Charles, people remain incredibly irritated when you're not on YouTube on Sundays.
Sorry for that. We did warn. I tweeted it out.
I know, and it was Mother's Day and everything,
yeah.
but you know, people want to send me emails. Somebody sent me an email saying, "Oh, you're slowing down." So I guess if I'm not doing 12, 13, 14 broadcasts a week, that's not adequate for some people. But Charles, these broadcasts could not continue without the sponsorship of the audience. People can go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. People can also become one-time sponsors by going to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And still to this day, $10 and higher sponsors get the official Sunday with Charles screensaver. People love it. Even the people who email me annoyed that we don't have broadcasts necessarily every single Sunday.
Well, this is a Make-up Monday.
Yes. It's a special Sunday with Charles, special Monday Mother's Day edition.
Exactly. Well, it's a treat to be back on the air, and there's a lot to discuss, but we have to pay, I don't know if this is the correct term, homage to the art department here, because this poster is really intricate. It's from a great movie. I don't know, Jason, you said you hadn't seen it, but
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
There's a series of them. The first one is DC Has Fallen, and now the second one I think was this one. And if you're looking for whatever it is, 93 minutes of just sort of purge your mind sort of stuff, it's pretty well done. It's action packed. It's got some. I've probably seen it 10 times just because it's
really
regularly on television when I've got nothing else to watch, so I watch it. It's sort of funny.
That's an airplane movie for me.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, watch that on the movie. Someone is saying there's no sound, but I'm monitoring the broadcast. I believe there is sound, so people want to make sure they have the sound turned on.
Good.
Yeah.
That would help.
That would indeed help. And Charles, it's just been a whirlwind. Mother's Day, I was out of town there, and I'm back now. So
that's good.
You've prepared another great presentation for us today. What do we want to talk about before we kick it off?
Well, you mentioned something about Laura Loomer that I think is quite relevant. When we see the arrogance of somebody like Mark Zuckerberg and Dorsey and the folks at Google, and 20 years ago they were in school, now they're deciding who gets to say anything in the world, and that doesn't strike me as consistent with principles upon which this country was founded. And we can't manage. We should, unlike Chelsea Clinton, we don't want to govern the world.
Does Chelsea Clinton want to do that?
That's her book, Governing Global Health, by the diarrhea, the so-called diarrhea expert. Give me a break. But anyway, so here we have a situation where the rules and regulations that come out of Washington D.C. really didn't contemplate the idea that folks like Zuckerberg, Dorsey, and others could, with Silicon Valley backing and a lot of retail interest in the stocks, create these monopolies or near monopolies that do, in this day of failing newspapers and failing terrestrial radio and certainly failing network television, suddenly these tech titans have the ability really to just stifle views that they don't like. And much like 18-year-olds whose minds are not really fully developed, a 30-year-old is not somebody who's had enough life experiences to really, most 30-year-olds do not have enough life experiences, maturity, etc., judgment, to be thinking about, wielding the sweeping powers that somebody like Mark Zuckerberg does have. And here I don't get on the side of Elizabeth Warren, not just because I don't like virtually anything she has to say, but I honestly think that the best way of dealing with these Facebooks and Googles and others is forcing them to make full disclosure of their business models, of how they're making money off of these users. So you get to do, I had a mentor in banking who used this very technical merger when you think about a merger, you do this very technical analysis. It's called has-gets analysis. What do you has and what do you gets? What do you has before you sign up for Google or Facebook or Twitter, and what do you get as a result of doing it? And you really want to make that exchange. I mean, when you don't understand how valuable your metadata is, all the information that Google processes and Facebook and Twitter and others, when you don't understand just how valuable that is, you let, and I'm jumping around here a little bit, you let those stupid Alexa machines into your house, or you start using these virtual assistants, and you're giving away a tremendous amount of valuable information.
Yeah.
Also, that Mark Zuckerberg could build a higher wall around his house and then argue that we shouldn't have a border wall in the United States of America. I mean, it's way, way out of balance. And you know Laura Loomer better than I do, but I've had the pleasure of meeting her a few times. That's a courageous young person.
Yeah.
I'd give Laura Loomer control over editorial decisions at Facebook well before I'd give Mark Zuckerberg or anybody else like him.
Yeah.
And so for her to be really, it's vicious what's going on to her. In this Me Too era, we're not talking about any kind of sexual assault, but in some ways this is even worse. They're trying to rub her off the face of the earth for having an opinion that challenges the orthodoxy of these, frankly, arrogant morons who seem to have ironclad grips for now over these big companies. I don't like it.
I don't like it either, Charles, and there's a lot of protection that they have from this Communications Decency Act, but I think that there's so much exploration of this situation that needs to go on. Just the fact that they allow so many people to create secondary accounts under fake names or alternative names. We don't really know how many users these services have, and if they're selling advertising based on, look, advertising, if you have a magazine that nobody reads, the ads are not expensive. If you have the New York Times with millions in circulation, that's how you base the price of the ads.
Right.
So how can they have all these, they don't know who's behind these fake accounts, and it allows people to do all kinds of social engineering exercises that we've spoken about quite a lot on Crowdsource the Truth. I agree with you. What's happening with Laura is absolutely terrible, that these independent companies have, at the same time, they call themselves the digital public square, and that, Jack Dorsey said it's everybody's right to access social media, but then they cut off Laura's access to it. So they're very hypocritical. It's a huge problem.
Yeah, and picking on Facebook a little bit, when you think about, we just spent who knows how much money on this Mueller witch hunt, $35 million plus, how much time, that's how much cash the government spent, but how much time, how valuable for people like Jerry Corsi's time, how do you put a price on what he had to pay his lawyers and then the time he spent
how about the stress?
And stress, et cetera. We spent an enormous amount on that, investigating what turns out to be concerns that didn't even rise to the level of a predicate crime. Collusion is not something you're supposed to, you can't convict somebody of collusion because it's not a crime. But anyway, we learned along the way that, how much was it? A couple $100,000 was spent on Facebook ads, or 4,000 or some small number?
4,700 on Google ads is what I saw.
Yeah, so 4,000, either of those Google ads are really freaking powerful ads. For $4,700, you can invalidate the expressed will of the American people in the presidential election, even though Barack Obama repeatedly assured us when he thought that Hillary was going to win, that remember all those, arrogant, know-it-all remarks. It's ridiculous to think that, the elections can be rigged.
What does that even mean?
What does that even mean exactly? Before Hillary loses. The next thing you know, rigged. It's just.
Well, Charles, I had created this graphic for a Kevin Shipp, Larry Klayman show of Robert Mueller ordering the most expensive nothing burger in history. He's got his lunch check right there, and he's got a scotch in his hand, of course. There's a nothing burger there. People can actually order this on T-shirts and mugs now if they go to redbubble.com. And actually, I believe there is a sale going on today on Redbubble. I'll have to get that discount code for everybody before the end of the show, but you can get lots of great Crowdsource the Truth swag on
That's really nice.
That's
nice.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Very well done.
Now, so Charles, you've got another presentation for us today. Should we get right to it?
Why not?
Okay, let's do that. Slides it is.
So we have we started last Sunday, the previous Sunday, with introducing you folks to this guy, Sir Richard Dearlove, who I think is one of those behind the scenes people who, in theory, retired from MI6, but in practice, did he? Yeah. And really, I think what has been going on when we go into recent history, back to 1945, let's say, which is from 1945 to about early 1980s. England was a basket case. It was like what AOC's vision is, for America. I mean, just nothing worked. It was just socialism.
Terrible restaurants.
Well, everything was wrong. I mean, it was just all screwed up because prior to 1945, prior to the advent of World War II, England still retained colonial relationships. It retained, the English companies operating on the inside the territory exported around the world to all their places. So, booming businesses. The Depression hurt them some, but they had to resize the whole economy and accept the fact that the United States was the dominant Western power.
Supersize it.
Yeah, and meanwhile, we of course were really in a Cold War with Russia, the Soviet Union, and Communist China hadn't decided what to do, and India was asleep. I mean, it was a very difficult period, particularly for the English people who'd been accustomed so long to a very high standard of living. So by the time 1982 came around, I picked 82 because that's when Reagan. Initially, they fought Reagan, not as hard as they're fighting Trump, but they definitely, attempted to suggest that he was just nothing more than a movie actor.
Yeah.
What the hell does he know about politics?
Right.
We're still in charge.
Even though he had been the governor of California
and spokesman for GE.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, anyway, so they fought him tooth and nail, and there emerged. So this whole issue of whether the folks in England and the UK respect their junior cousins, we, the people of America, they kind of still look down on most Americans as being uneducated and not as cultured and not able to, wise in the ways of the world the way these English people think they are.
Except for orthodontia.
Except for orthodontia, yes, yes. But anyway, so there's been a long pattern and practice of particularly people in the Labour Party in the UK cozying up to the hard left here in the United States, and there are these deep-seated arrangements, and Bill Clinton figures into that. I mean, he was a Rhodes Scholar, but whatever year that was, 68 to 70 or 69 to 71, whatever. Well, I forget the years he was there, but and his ties with English people go way, way back, and of course he developed the closest with Tony Blair, and when the English are looking at their future. They had to make a big decision about the European Union. Do they want to be part of it or not part of it? Do they want to be part of this globalist game or not part of the globalist game? And they made a decision in the UK, I think most of them, to play. They loved this unregulated globalism. It was fantastic, and it's great stuff for them. They could hang around in the G8 and the G20 and the UN and all these agencies. And to be fair to the people of England, they have been the most significant players in NATO, and they do spend a lot on, and have not only spent money, but they've lost lives in the defense of freedom, so they deserve an enormous amount of credit for that. But they have been all in for this unregulated globalism, and Clinton and Blair made it seem like it was working right through when Clinton left in 2001. And
how did they make it seem like?
Well, I mean, the numbers in the United States from 1982, which I know is Reagan, but from 82 through to about 2000, well, let's say 2000, were unbelievable economic numbers. I mean, in modern context, they were, jobs were going like this regularly. Stock market was going like this. The budget deficit went to nothing in 2000. There were a lot, and rivals were going bankrupt around the world. The former Soviet Union blew up. I mean, it was a great moment in that time period, and a lot of those successes built on the relationship Margaret Thatcher with Ronald Reagan, and then ultimately Tony Blair with Bill Clinton. So there's a long history and a lot of reasons for them to believe, foolishly, that it's all because of them that we had this growth. The reality is there were deep demographic things going on, that after World War II, or during World War II, the birth rates went down, and all of a sudden, 1945 and afterwards, people started having a lot of kids. Those kids grew up. Those kids became in the 25 to 54 age category. Those are the people who put households together, and then they start buying homes and fixing them up and buying disproportionately. So there was there's a demographic engine. There was an opening the world up at the time that the Soviet Union blew up engine. A lot of good things were going right, and plus you started from a base in 1979 through 81 of very, very high interest rates. So you could coordinate the lowering of interest rates that pushes up the value of all kinds of assets, stocks, bonds, houses, you name it, everything was going up. So it was a euphoric period, and you can look back at that period with a certain amount of nostalgia. And first George W. Bush, was thought to be an oaf, and that's a compliment looking at it, today. But back certainly when he won, Hillary referred to him as being selected, not elected. He was viewed as an illegitimate president. The English were like, we have to deal with this douche. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so a lot of these cockamamie plans that we have been exposing for the frauds that they are have deep origins, and you cannot just look at this from an American transatlantic ties, and to a lesser extent our trans-Pacific ties. And there are people who figured out very quickly what was really going on. This globalist superstructure was going to sit on top of all the national laws, and you get your 13 BlackBerries, you start running around the world, and when people want to ask you tough questions, you say, I've got to go to the Clean Water Conference in Dhaka, Bangladesh. You can't trifle with these questions. And then off to this place, to Krakow in Poland, to talk about, they just felt, let's get rid of all these laws, and we're globalists. I mean, we're too busy to deal with these nitwits and questions about what we're doing. We have to make more money.
Charles, I don't know if I had a chance to discuss this with you, but a week or two ago there was a big dust-up about measles and how anti-vaxxers have caused a measles outbreak. And I forget where I heard this, but apparently the World Health Organization has the ability to take control of the world, of martial law, if they declare that there's some sort of pandemic.
Well, we'd have to check the size of their army.
I mean,
I like the fact. I mean, when you get into that, the globalism, there are two interesting people who stand out. One, thankfully, is still dead, Maurice Strong, who was a crook. He was a Canadian crook who got really into promoting globalism, unregulated globalism. And then there's a woman who's still alive, Gro Brundtland, from Norway. They got into the Rio conference in the 90s, whenever that was, and they've been promoting these schemes. The simple fact is there is no UN, serious UN army. And there really just is the illusion of any kind of global order right now. Individual nation states decide what they want to do. You can put together alliances, as the US has done, but they involve deciding who's actually going to fight, and who's going to stand in the way of those bombs and bullets. And today, yes, the French send wonderful cooks to these battles, and some fighting for. I'm joking a little bit here, but they send some. The French Foreign Legion's tough, but when it comes to a real
is that
fight,
a real thing? I always
very
thought
much
that was
so,
something that Woody Woodpecker joins.
And inside France, the French National Police you do not want to trifle with them. But in the main, it's been the United States forces that have been in the thick of these battles. Whether we should be is another question, but we have been. So there is no, there's no global tax enforcement. There's no mechanism to go and look globally at a corporation's tax and say, if you don't pay us this penalty to the global tax court, we're going to take your shit and put you in jail. There's no mechanism to do that.
Well, more and more it's becoming the U.S. I mean, we've seen U.S. forces go into Canada in the case of Starnet Communications and do a raid. U.S. forces went to New Zealand. when they wanted to get Kim.com. We've heard about how Robert Mueller had some kind of plan to do something with Julian Assange. Now, I mean, I don't know, the Five Eyes, that symbol on the hat we had last week, it seems like there's a lot of these conglomerates of nations that could sort of be the international body.
Right, but as we've seen through the course of doing these various broadcasts, what the puppeteers want to do is to set one camp against another camp, so you're too busy fighting to ignore the theft that's going on.
Yeah.
The theft of your personal information to be harvested by these tech titans, to be harvested by these private investors, the theft of your opportunity to make money by creating these absurd rules that don't make any sense, these vast bureaucracies filled with highly paid government workers who, workers in quotes, the fact that we're spending in this country $7 trillion a year on government, and that's not enough for AOC. I mean, she wants to spend more than that, you know, because it's expensive to have these two apartments of hers, and you know, she's got to have a higher salary.
Is that what she said?
I'm just making that up. But anyway, so in the case of the UK made a choice. You know, despite, you know, we talk about meddling in foreign elections and referenda. Barack Obama, you know, who decried the possibility of any meddling going on in the United States, got on Air Force One that travels with Air Force One all the time, flew, you know, no regard to climate change issues with that one, and flew over to the UK in the middle of their Brexit referendum and gave speeches where he said...
2 Air Force Ones fly.
There's always, I think there's at least more than one. There could be more than 2. Anyway, they went over there, and he gets on, you know, BBC or whatever, some rotten channel over there, and says, you know, you got to, more or less, you've got to remain, and if you don't, you're going to go to the back of the line to negotiate a trade deal with the U.S. as long as I'm president. And the British people said, okay, we're going to Brexit. Thank you for that advice. And, you know, that vote is old. I mean, when did that vote happen? It was 2016, I guess, because Obama was still president. And, you know, you watch these UK politicians come to the microphone, Schumer style, and they're just, you know, they should drink less at lunch. They're making no sense. They can't put together, the people said, we want a Brexit. You know, and there's a clear opportunity. You look, you really want to be part of, you know, the Euro sausage crowd at Strasbourg and, you know, Brussels and all this kind of stuff? They said, no, screw that.
I mean, it's becoming one of the most ridiculous things of all time. And people voted for it and they didn't like the vote, so now they just keep voting again. Yeah,
it's like, I mean, they must be distributing those shirts that my friend likes to wear up in Millbrook. The beatings will stop when morale improves. I mean, you know, that's the approach they're taking. and you know, the British people, this Nigel Farage is really surging in the European election polls right now. And
is he?
Yeah, and the idea that it makes sense to create these gigantic bureaucracies, our own government at $7 trillion, the European Union superstate, I don't even know how much that costs. The only people that makes sense for are the bureaucrats and the catering firms. I mean, and the vendors. I mean, it's absurd to think that in an era where it's possible to do what we're doing here, what you're doing with Crowdsource the Truth, with you know, the far less capital invested than you would have had to do in 2001 or 1981 to try to do this kind of stuff.
Even 2010.
Right. The idea that in this environment we need to spend ever more amounts of money on vague concepts and plans and slogans and elections and this and that, with no visibility, no transparency in where that actual money went, no examination of how it's possible to be 2 dead broke grifters, the Clintons, admittedly so, in the White House today worth $200 million or more. Who knows how much they're worth? No examination of that at a time where, you know, technology is giving everyone tools to do amazing things. Competitors lurk around the world, you know, in forward-looking small nations like Singapore, for example, are business-friendly. Hong Kong is business-friendly. Other places around the world are business-friendly. You know, the notion that the UK should continue on the fractured continent of Europe to put together this quilt of, I don't even know how many different nations there are in the EU at this point, 29 or so, you know, and have these absurd conferences and parliaments and laws and basically crush the life out of the economy. I mean, the reason that Europe is not doing well is they're not encouraging people to have families and children. They're allowing absurd retirement approaches. The tax rates are off the charts high. They're meddling in everybody's life. They're tolerant societies. And the British people looked at that and said, you know, we could do that over here. We don't need to do that with the French. Yeah, we'll just do it ourselves.
You know, Charles, Singapore is very business friendly unless you're in the business of eating a sandwich on the subway. Then it's a $10,000 fine.
That's a good thing. I mean, there's nothing. I actually do ride the subway, particularly when it's raining or snowing or whatever. And you see these people, not only, if you're going to eat on the subway, at least have decent table manners, not food falling out of your face.
$20,000 fine for KFC.
That's right.
No, I'll tell you something. When I was there for a 3D film festival in 2009, I think, I saw a woman eating a sandwich on the subway. I was like, you're insane. Why would you do that? Why risk it?
Right.
How good could that sandwich possibly be? How hungry could you be?
But the other thing to point out, and most people don't know this history, and it's sad that they don't, but that I was on, I think, with Susan Lee, who's now at Fox Business, in, I want to say, 2010 or 11 timeframe, asking my view of the EU, and I said back then that, you know, I thought Germany should leave the EU. But it was that screwed up back then, and she just didn't know what to say. She didn't know whether I was a complete moron or, you know, just didn't understand what I was talking about. But we tried this mess that the EU is. We weren't around, you and I, but from 1782 to 1789, the original Articles of Confederation that came together when America was first born didn't work. You know, they didn't have a central taxing authority. They didn't have. It was a confederation. There wasn't. The executive was not powerful enough. It just didn't freaking work, and it's not working in the EU either. I hope. Actually, I see. It's going to be short-term pain for the UK, but if they reach across to the Trump administration and then put together, restore strong ties with former Commonwealth countries, they may not be able to do it with India or China, but you know, with Australia, with Canada, with many markets, there are deep-standing ties and common British and legal traditions that would make it very easy for UK entrepreneurs to have a leg up, and not that you need much of a leg up over Brussels, you know, Belgium, or you pick a smaller country in Europe. So the game today is to come up with a world-beating service or product and try to market it as quickly as possible and sell it for cash, ideally to customers that don't have to borrow to buy your product, and build up something that has enormous value. That's something you can do across the United States, maybe not in Manhattanistan here in New York, or you know, New Yorkistan or Californiastan, but in New Hampshire and Texas, and there are quite a few business-friendly states where if you've got a great idea, you know, you headquarter your business there, and you could sell it big in the U.S., big around the world. That's what people in the UK should be doing, not introducing Sharia law courts across the UK.
Is that happening?
Very much so.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Aren't they about to toss out Theresa May?
They should.
I mean, isn't that imminent?
I believe you're right, the vote could be, but the problem is, actually, what's going to be interesting to watch.
Put in Schwarzenegger?
No, they're going the wrong way. They're going to put in, you know, people who are to the left of Bernie Sanders.
But what was that when
Corbyn.
they had? But when they put in Schwarzenegger, they had some vote against Gray Davis. I forget the term, but they threw him out.
Yeah, I know what you mean. To remove him from office or whatever. But no, I think, sadly, what will happen here, England's going to go through even more pain because they're going to put in a real hard left guy, Jeremy Corbyn, and then that government will fail.
Oh.
You know, you give it a fighting chance. You give it a week. I mean, I'm kidding. You get through the summer car burning season in Europe. And
I thought that's just France.
Well, it's spreading.
Nice.
So, with that, why don't we jump into the next slide? I see you've got more and more subscribers. You're getting back towards 82,000, I believe.
It's getting very close to 82,000. You know, it's strange, Charles. It was almost like a clamp was lifted off the subscriber base there on YouTube because it was hovering around, I don't know, it does this up and down thing where it sort of goes back and forth and hovers around. We're getting real close, dangerously close to 82,000. People should check and make sure they're remaining subscribed. I can't imagine how this mechanism works. I mean, we've heard that, you know, YouTube has some way of determining who is a fake subscriber or whatever and automatically unsubscribing people. I don't know how they make that determination, but I hope our viewers are checking to make sure that they're remaining subscribed if they choose to be, and also becoming sponsors on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We've also, Charles, been adding to the playlist, so for people who want to follow along, maybe if they've missed certain episodes of Sunday with Charles or Charles Ortel is closing in, they can go to the playlist and they can see every episode. This is our 158th. Who knew?
Yeah, and actually I had a friend of mine send me an email the other day and say, "Are you still on the air doing, your shows?" And I said, "Yeah, here's the playlist. You know, we've only done 100, by that point, 157 two-hour shows." And this person, forgive me.
You missed one and people are like all over it.
Well, that's good, and I apologize for sometimes we have logistical issues that we have to cope with, and so we'll get through this, but this is a team effort here, and thanks to all of you who do watch and help in various ways. I can report, because it's over now, that we were able to, with our good friends in Norway, we were able to put together a fascinating discussion wherein Steve Bannon, who was already in Norway in a different place, agreed to come to Oslo. The event was live streamed. There's a great portal that we've got to get the guy who runs it on the air and do an interview of him. He put together a real speech, not the kind where, $2 tickets, $700 list price and $2 tickets, and people dressed up in Sesame Street character suits show up with the Clinton Foundation stuff. But no, this was a real speech. It was it was overbooked. Bannon did a fantastic job. The mainstream press, some of them were there. They were trying to paint him as a fire-breathing maniac, and he came across. The reports I've heard from various parties are he came across really well. The event, as I say, was live streamed, and we'll figure out how people can watch it.
Might be in Norwegian. Might be in Norwegian.
No, it's in English.
Yeah, Bannon probably doesn't speak Norwegian.
Not only after about 6 drinks.
You've reminded me, Charles, that Bill and Chelsea Clinton, I think we touched on this, but they've got their "Why Am I Telling You This?", which is the new podcast that they're doing. And then I was just looking here on the podcasts.apple.com, where they've put up the series preview. So far, the customer reviews are pretty poor here. We've got "Stop Insulting Us. The Clinton regime has had decades to speak and be heard. Why do they need a new platform?" 1 star.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know. Why are they telling us this is a good question.
That's very good. I don't suppose it'll be possible to get him or her or Chelsea saying incredibly stupid things and then get somebody like Gilbert Gottfried's voice, "Why am I telling you this?" Overlay. But anyway, we'll see. I mean, look, they do have, these are global celebrities, and they have a lot of people interested in what they have to say. It'll be truly interesting to see what their metrics are compared to ours. It'll be very interesting. They should start with a natural, massive base.
You would think.
And then if they have the up-down voting stuff, that'll be interesting to see as well.
Yeah.
Far be it from me to suggest that Crowdsource the Truth people should go on and downvote everything that's on there. But
well, if they like it, they should upvote it. If they dislike it, they should downvote it. But what the hell are those two going to talk about? Why are you telling us this?
That's all right. Because we didn't bleach bit it. Oh no, because we did bleach bit the truth. That's why we're telling you this.
I think the answer is, why am I telling you this? Is because if you knew the true story, we'd be in jail. That's why. Very easy answer.
But for the new viewers in particular, this is an approach where we are, and I actually think it might be worthwhile, Jason, to go to the playlist and show people how to do this, because we had somebody complain that they couldn't get the download.
Right. So when you go, so you're talking about the the presentations that people can download. So I try to, with every video that we do, and if I ever forget, there are people who remind me, but to include a link to your slideshows here, and it's usually just right here in the description.
But before you jump, you're very quick because you're technologically adept. What Jason did is there's something that says show more. And you got to click on that, show more, and then up comes this link, download the presentation.
Right.
And there you have it. And I think pretty much every show that we've had a presentation on, there's now a link. And if there isn't, please let us know. We'll find it.
Yeah. But the first 2 or 3 maybe, no. But out of 158, there's like 155 that have it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think in the first 2 or 3 there were no slide presentations.
Yeah, yeah.
In any case where we have done a slide presentation, there should be a link.
Yes.
And we will be going through, I will be going through a process of reorganizing all that just for different reasons. But
it smells like Indian food suddenly, doesn't it? Maybe I imagine.
If you say so.
Somebody must have got a delivery across the hall.
If you say so. But anyway, so this is a cooperative effort, and we really do appreciate the ideas that come streaming in by email and other ways. We try to give you, the viewership, the opportunity to look at this data and think about it. And the people who do that, get stuck into it, take it pretty far. I mean, I won't say how many different countries, but I will tell you quite a few different countries. There are maturing, very serious, thorough investigations going on, and there's a lot of concern and interest over why is it taking the Trump administration so damn long to get this across the line. But rest assured, this series is pitched towards the staffs of the investigators around the world to make your lives easier. Yes, it's a lot of hours, but I've spent many times that number of hours studying all these different things, and indeed every day I spend, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours on this. And there's a lot to consider, because so many different donors have either been, purchasing influence through the Clinton Foundation or duped or both. And so many countries have been harmed. I mean, so many, you think about it, I remember the first time I went, the only time I went to the country of Niger, Niger, way back in 1976, they warned us that you're not supposed to take pictures.
Why?
Because the locals in the particular place where we were believed you were stealing their soul.
And what do they do if you take the picture? Kill you?
They might, yeah. I mean, kill is strong, but you might get in trouble. So there's an element of truth to that. If you think about the way in which it's so easy to slap a big-bellied, thin African kid's face on the cover of a glossy brochure with flies buzzing around and tears. And how many thousand grandmothers and grandfathers will send you $10 or $15 or whatever, and so there's a certain element of truth to that. That before the IRS, the Department of Justice, should have more strict reviews inside this country of any charity that is raising money to do work internationally, because what you learn when you travel, I mean, it's not like you get off the plane in Niamey Airport, and I've been there in a long time, and you've got, and that's in Niger. You've been there?
No, but that picture is...
Oh, getting off a plane. Yeah, so there you go. It's not like you get off the plane and you go out and there's 150 taxi cabs, trying to get in position to go on the interstate, to go to the 50 different hotel complexes, and so you can then rent a car or get into either get an Uber or a Lyft or rent a car and drive 600 miles.
Two undernourished guys wheeling up some rickety stairs.
Right, exactly. I mean, people outside this country just don't understand how rich, in terms of how much money we've already spent on infrastructure that is not yet even on the drawing boards in much of the developing world. And so there really should be a lot. We've got to make an example of these fraudsters in and around the Clinton Foundation, who have been exploiting, on the one hand, their potential great power over this largest economy in the world. Had Hillary, God forbid, been president of the United States, and if that had happened, with Chelsea lining up as maybe the third Clinton to be president of the United States, you have the greed that people saw, the evidence that is incontrovertible evidence that the Clintons will definitely reward their friends and punish their enemies. There's no debate about that. No serious journalist, right, is going to debate whether that's going to happen. And so, and then you consider that that going and figuring out what a U.S. charity actually did in the bowels of, let's say, Sri Lanka. I mean, it's not so easy to do that. Sri Lanka is a small country, but go down to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is vast, and there are very few roads in the country. There are rebels, there are landmines, there are all kinds of problems. You're never going to know what really happened with that money, because who's going to be the intrepid person to go into the middle of that country? How are they going to get there? How much freedom are they going to have?
Collect the receipts.
Yeah, you said, I want to just see all of those receipts, What's that pot doing over there, that big pot? Why is it boiling, and why are you putting all, It's a very, it's an area where there are too many charlatans who will coax money out of the giving public and steal it.
Yeah.
And or misrepresent what they did, or in the first place, the Clinton Foundation has never had the authority, the way I read it, to do any work outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. So what the hell are you doing in all these countries? You're smart lawyers, you're the President of the United States. Nobody around you could come to you and say, hey, Bill, look, we ought to change these articles of incorporation and notify the IRS that instead of doing this stuff only in Little Rock, we want to be in 70 countries around the world.
Selling pharmaceuticals.
Selling pharmaceuticals and making money for our contributors.
Yeah.
So, people know how to contact me through my site, I think. Just Google contact in the site. And you can also reach me on Twitter. I know that it's important to build a Twitter following, and I'm delighted that yours is growing, Jason, and mine is growing. And
yeah, people can follow you on there at Charles Ortel. You're at 35.3, Charles. That's a new high, right?
Yeah, slow, steady growth. I appreciate it. I actually also appreciate the degree to which, I haven't actually recently done it, but you can figure out the engagement of your followers. And I really appreciate the fact that many people are retweeting and liking and sending messages. And it's very helpful, actually. At the beginning, when I had very few followers, I didn't really pay much attention to this. But now I get excellent leads, and I appreciate them.
That is good. Laura went to Jack Dorsey's house, I think last week, and was projecting some tweets onto the wall outside his house there, which resulted in the cops coming. I don't know. I don't think she got in trouble. But of course, the thing that's happened now is that Facebook kicked Laura off, and they've called her dangerous, which is something they're not protected under the Communications Decency Act, Section 230. So we'll see what her response to that will be. But I digress.
So yesterday, we like to cover a few breaking things. So yesterday, I'm looking at Yahoo, and I see this story. This is on Mother's Day.
Wow.
This nitwit husband of Kellyanne Conway calls Trump a malignant narcissist and committed the ultimate high crime. His wife is like the senior counselor of Donald Trump.
Boss. It's for no other reason. Just shut up about the boss.
It's George. What the hell?
That's the husband right there?
Yeah. And I've met Kellyanne Conway a few times. She's a remarkable person, very smart lady. I think they have 3 or 4 kids together. Why would you say this kind of crap in public?
Yeah.
As the husband of the president's senior counselor, it's just absurd. And how do they? I don't even want to think about whether they kiss and make up at the end of this. This is not the first time this idiot has been.
He's saying there was a legitimate investigation.
He's an idiot, and I know on paper he's not an idiot, because I think he was a partner or is a partner at one of these big law firms. Tell me the predicate crime, under which James Comey and the Department of Justice decided to open this investigation. What was the crime that opened it up? Show me that trail. Show me the truth about when this actually began. And we're going to get into that in some depth. But, not a great Mother's Day for Kellyanne, unless this is all just, a coordinated campaign to get more publicity for the family. But
maybe they'll write a book.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. So
everybody's writing books, Charles.
Yeah. Now this is interesting. This Rand Paul is absolutely right. It goes back to before the Clintons, I think. We've been teasing this out, because the important thing is when you push on something and you tell the whole truth to the world, it never works. Because people are not prepared to embrace this. My experience, anyway, in the beginning on GE, you know, people would say to me, Charles, you know, you may be right, but you know, so many things would have to be wrong with GE in order for you to be correct, that I can't believe that the regulators didn't see this, and the IRS and the New York Stock Exchange and all these. So in this case, this is, we've talked about it before, this is death on the Potomac, you know, like death on the Nile,
right?
Where you're wondering, you know, which person is the villain, when the truth is that everybody is involved here in attempting to cover up a long-standing conspiracy that dates back to 1998, 88, 89, maybe earlier, where a bunch of the insiders, you know, no one can tell them that what they're doing is actually wrong. And no, the Constitution is not an outdated document that you can think about when you want to and change when you wish. You know, the Constitution.
Wipe your feet on it when it suits you.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because I got this great opportunity over here to make money in Pakistan, or as Obama likes to say, Pakistan.
Yeah.
You know, we'll just forget the Constitution. That's, you know, yesterday's news. This has been a long-standing major league problem, and a lot of people in both parties are implicated in it, and they don't want the truth to be told.
Yeah.
So here we have Nerdler, this guy.
He's the worst.
His handlers may be trying to make him look dumber than he actually is, but to go and say, all right, look, you know, I'm going to hold the Attorney General in contempt because I haven't gotten 100% of a document when I've got 99.9% of the document and I haven't read it. You know, to think that that's going to sit well with anybody. I mean, this is not, you're not playing, this is not Gangs of New York, you know, where you got one gang, the Trump gang, fighting against the Nerdler gang. I mean, this is ridiculous behavior, wasting a tremendous amount of time, mischaracterizing what's really going on, and you know, I think his poll numbers, if he's going to stand for re-election in 2020, I'll just say Nadler, they can't be looking terribly good, because this guy is really straight up stupid and aggressive as hell, and he's fighting. You know, they have the phrase: if you don't have the law on your side, use the facts. If you don't have the facts, use the law. And if you don't have neither, just insult your opponent. That's basically what he's doing. Doesn't have the law, doesn't have the facts. All he can do is he thinks he's the king of insulting. Wrong again. Have you checked how effective Trump's insults are?
Trump is the king of insulting,
it's like,
no doubt.
Insult the Triumph dog, right? Or insult the Trump dog.
Oh yeah, Triumph the insult dog. Yeah, I don't know. Nadler's not impressive in any regard.
And then we get this one from you know, this is like the rich kid in the sandbox who's brought all the toys to the park, and
whoa, why should the Biden scandal be off?
Because it would implicate him. You know, this
guy's out of his mind.
He really, I don't think he could pass a sanity check with the questions in advance.
Why? What logical?
There is no logic. It's just...
Oh, no, that scandal's off limits.
Yeah.
Here's the scandals you can investigate. These scandals off limits.
That's right. It's just crazy.
Adam Schiff's scandal sandbox.
Right, exactly. and you sit there, and because the mainstream press, you know, has been so foolish here, only putting in anti-Trump people guests in the main, it's created this environment where, you know, who watches, you know, MSNBC regularly? I mean, come on. It's the village idiot, you know, the people who are stuck in an airport or a bus station or a train station with nothing better to watch.
That's not creepy. Son groping Biden?
That's not creepy. And, you know, this is ridiculous stuff. Ridiculous stuff. And
Look
it's
who
not
he's hanging out with here, Charles.
I know, your buddies.
Not my buddies.
But yeah, the Shifty Schiff. I suppose it sells in California, and I think, you know, you're the one who was recently out there. I mean, I was born in California. I think we have to ask ourselves, how seriously tainted is the water supply in California? I mean, this guy is not well, Mr. Schiff. He's just, and people are voting for him.
That's the most disturbing part. He's out of his mind, Adam Schiff.
Yeah.
He's got to go.
Yeah.
One of the worst guys ever.
Yeah, and he's not helping. I mean, I suppose we should encourage him to, you know, to speak nonstop. I'm sure he'll be on one of the shows tonight, no doubt.
Encourage him to speak nonsense nonstop.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we get this question, you know, I'm delighted to see this, and I don't know who this character Whitney is, but Judgment Day is now looming for Brennan. I think that's correct, yeah, Mike Whitney. The question, you know, the process by which senior government appointees, Senate confirmed appointees, get vetted is a process that troubles me, because
It's a good picture of him.
it is a good picture, but
I like the Trump, what do you call that? Stockade?
yeah, the stocks, I think they call it. Yeah, but I mean, he looks a bit like Pat Leahy in that, but
Looks like Brennan.
yeah, it's Brennan though, I know. But Brennan has always troubled me. This is Larry Johnson. We know Larry Johnson. He's always troubled me because of his background. I mean, I had thought that, you know, one of the big no-nos when applying for a job in the CIA is to admit that you were a member of the Communist Party.
Right.
I mean, generally speaking.
And now a Wahhabi Muslim?
Right, exactly.
Oh, yeah, let's make him the director.
Yeah, exactly. And let him, you know, we had an election. Yeah, forget that. Brennan knows better.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to put, you know, they say a fish rots from the head. If you're going to put this idiot as head of the CIA, who made that decision? I mean, they're sitting around a table saying, all right, how quickly do we want to destroy this country? Valerie Jarrett says, well, why don't we do it in less than 8 years?
Yeah.
And someone else says, no, we better wait till 10, because we'll be out of office for 2 years. We can blame it on whoever comes next. You know, so they say, well, this crucial appointment, the CIA, we're fighting, you know, the JV in ISIS. Let's put this idiot in charge of the CIA, empower him.
Well,
and
it's
let
his
him
good
talk.
mood and his sunny disposition
Exactly.
that obviously got him the job.
That's right. Send him some stool softener. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
He doesn't look very happy. And but I do hope his day of judgment is coming. And I wonder, you know, I would go back to when I've been working occasionally with very big companies, that they have the overhead and wherewithal and interest to go back over all the decisions they've made, good or bad, and try to learn from their mistakes. I mean, so how did this guy, who put this guy's name up as head of the CIA? Anyone object to that? You know, who was the sponsors of this
Wasn't
idiocy?
it Obama?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think so. So,
Question answered.
yeah, exactly. Well, but how many people in addition to Obama? I mean, in those, I've never been in, nor do I ever want to be in a meeting like that, but I would guess that there are quite a few people involved in these type of decisions, and there should be a record.
You know, Charles, we're joking about this a little bit, but we've got, you know, Brennan is a former member of the Communist Party. David Hawkins and I have done a lot of shows about Barack Obama's connections to the Weather Underground, which was a Marxist
Right.
association. And David Hawkins, one of his primary allegations is that the Weather Underground never went away. It just went deeper underground and actually infiltrated the U.S. government, with Bernardine Dorn mentoring Michelle and Barack Obama at Sidley Austin.
Yeah, it's not good.
There's not been enough investigation into that relationship, I don't think.
Yeah. Now, here we have, next one. Yeah. This is interesting. Jim Baker apparently is getting a little nervous
FBI lawyer.
about the direction of this investigation. I'm also nervous from the standpoint that, you know, I know from reading up on this that the Inspector General, I believe, is primarily investigating conduct of employees who remain in the Justice Department. I don't know how much he's going to be doing about people who've left. And I don't know the ground rules under which his report's being written. But all the rumors coming out, finally, are suggesting that it's going to be very devastating. And to the extent it is devastating, what you're going to see, if the president follows past practice, you're going to see damaging stuff come out before the report, and then Hillary Clinton's minions will be saying, that's old news when the report comes out. Oh, that's old news. That's been litigated. You know, this is, you can't go after a political opponent, you know, because that's not what we did in Arkansas or D.C. You know, that's not the kind of stuff we do.
And then look who it is, Ben Wittes.
Oh, right.
Very untrustworthy proprietor of the Lawfare blog and progenitor of many lies about the strange death of Peter Smith.
And you know, here's a funny thing for somebody that you're trying, I know you're trying to emulate me by not wearing socks, but That was my trademark. I know, just kidding. But that guy's socks. I mean, these. If you just go back to that picture for a second.
What was wrong with his socks?
I mean,
oh yeah.
People who think. I mean, I go in the morning. I have a cup of tea or something like that. And I'm sitting there in Starbucks, and there are all these guys of this guy's age, come in with an motorized skateboard and a stupid hat, and these socks and the crazy brown shoes and they think that by overpaying for stupid-looking socks, that's going to make you cool. Newsflash, just enjoy the clown show. I mean, you're just a card-carrying member of the clown.
You bought those socks on eBay.
He probably paid $50 for them, for all we know. Charged them to the government.
Sock of the Month Club.
Yeah. So, but this next one, the American Report, I'm not exactly sure what the American Report is, but this is a bombshell story here. If you go, this is, I think the authors are Mary Fanning. I don't know who Alan Jones is. This is a very...
Alan Jones is her husband or something, or her partner. That's the guy who George exposed where he worked.
No, it's not her husband.
But this is her partner in writing,
okay.
And George exposed this place of work.
Okay, but this is a very lengthy article that puts together a lot of good information about, when Comey decided to ramp things up and when he started really lying to Congress, and talks about things I don't know much about, but apparently there's a system called the Hammer.
It's a supercomputer or a quantum computer that's used to, spy on everybody.
And here we see on the 19th of August, 2015, Dennis Montgomery provides all this information to the U.S. Department of Justice. You see what it is, okay? And remember that the investigation into Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information the FBI investigation started July 10th, 2015. This is incredibly explosive. When you read the story, it's incredibly explosive information, suggesting that under the Barack Obama administration, they said, you know what, let's just shred the Constitution. Let's bleach bit the Constitution. What we're going to do is we're going to create this massive, extremely powerful system that will vacuum up information about every American. And we're just going to hold on, we're going to conduct a continuing intrusive search into everybody's life. And then when it becomes apparent that one or more of these people is posing a problem to the Obama administration, we're going to land with the full force of the law, having swept this stuff off the internet and other means, and we're going to threaten you and cajole you and blackmail you, etc. That is not only not a scandal-free administration, that is a crime-ridden organization. All right, that is the definition of making a mockery of the law. And it's time for these people who are too comfortable in mainstream media to think about what happened to Cheryl Atkinson. The way under the Obama administration, they went right after her aggressively. She's written books about it, talking about it. Why isn't Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes and Jake Tapper, why aren't they thinking for a second that this could happen to them? Yeah. We do not want to create a system this powerful that is then in the hands of private contractors, i.e. potential government.
Already is.
Yeah, well, we don't want that system. We got to change it.
You got it.
Well, I don't want it.
You just caused me to realize something, Charles. It actually was a scandal-free administration, because a crime is not a scandal until everybody hears about it. So they managed to make it a scandal-free administration. That's well done.
But that's a piece well worth spending 15 minutes, half an hour. And then if you do nothing else as a result of this broadcast, circulate that piece, please, to your friends. Word of mouth is a great way of doing this kind of stuff. Now here we have the subject of Comey. And I think Comey's got a serious ass whooping coming his way. And he deserves it. He really deserves it. And when I go back, and I haven't done the kind of work I can do just from public sources, to think through all the different places that James Comey's name starts showing up. In 1998, he was involved, in theory, investigating the Whitewater mess, and he didn't manage to see the obvious criminality of the Whitewater scheme. You take a bankrupt governor.
He left when his son died in the hospital.
Right, but you take a bankrupt family, no cash, no nothing, And here he's the governor of a state where, let's just say, it's a pliable state. And a real estate developer wants to make a rural land development, second home project work. So one easy way to do this is to get the governor to move the road around.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of stuff. And so I'm not saying that happened in that precise case, but the whole...
But it kind of did.
Yeah, it could well have happened in that.
I'm not saying that happened, but it did.
Yeah, that's their next book. Yeah. So Comey's antecedents need to be investigated very carefully. And on this issue of Ukraine, you know, people were saying that Giuliani's lost his steps, lost his touch, and he shouldn't have brought it up. He shouldn't have threatened to go to Ukraine. I think it was a very smart thing to do, because it now has put into closer focus that the Clintons and the Bidens have deep ties into the Ukraine. And I've been to Ukraine, I want to say 15 times, it might have been 12.
Wow.
Yeah, for various reasons. And it's a Gordian knot over there. I mean, you have Ukrainian nationalists, you have, you know, people whose families have been in Ukraine for, let's say, 2 generations, but they're basically Russian. You have other people who favor the Russians. It's not as simple as saying, you know, everybody in Ukraine is, you know, and favors this, everybody is against that. But the one thing that is true is that there's no long history of doing business under equally administered law. There is, on the other hand, particularly after the Soviet Union fell apart, quite a history of oligarchs snapping up valuable assets for fire sale prices and monetizing them via Swiss bank accounts and other ways. There's a lot of corruption in that country. And the notion that Shifty Adam Schiff would say, you know, we can't look at that. Yeah. We just spent all this time in the Russian collusion delusion. The last thing we should do is investigate a Ukrainian conspiracy.
Well, it ties into the FBI as well through this national anti...
right, the crime thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the NABU and everything that Lee Stranahan has been talking about for years. But that's off limits.
Yeah, and then, I mean, we do these shows with the notes, and it's easy for me anyway to talk off a slide like this, but when I watch Joe Biden, it's painful to watch Joe Biden in these crowd settings. You know, Trump goes to a venue in rural Wisconsin or wherever it is, Minnesota, and there's, you know, 10,000 people in the venue and 25,000 people outside. Biden goes to Nevada, a state where there are many public sector unions, and he can't even fill up, you know, a high school auditorium. And then he has, you know, you look at him give his speech. And Jason, I wanted to show you this. He's looking at the crowd is in front of him, and I believe that this is a priority. Yeah, I mean, the guy is like...
He's not good.
I mean, I don't think without the help that he's getting from various, you know, people and the insiders in the Democratic Party, I don't believe this guy could win an election for high school principal in Saginaw, Michigan. I mean,
but who is this kid? This is not his son or his grandson.
It may not be. I mean, that's really weird.
Yes.
But this is new allegations of Gateway Pundit that Biden is not simply handsy. I mean, this is really... We had to protect women from him. Weinstein-level stuff.
Why didn't they say Clinton-level stuff?
Yeah, because Weinstein is less than Clinton.
But he never had the Secret Service. He's Weinstein. Oh. Yeah, Joe Biden is going nowhere. This is an interesting Twitter handle.
The technosexual?
Ash.
I saw it, yeah. Yeah, it's just, there's nothing funny about that.
About Joe Biden.
And I honestly never, I mean, I cringed every time I saw Joe Biden kiss Michelle Obama on the lips. I mean, it's just like really weird. When I was married, I don't know of a time that anybody dared to kiss in front of me, you know, my ex-wife on the lips. That's very formal stuff, forward stuff to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was regularly doing it to Michelle. What the hell? I mean,
it's weird.
If I'm Barack Obama, I'd smack those aviator glasses off the guy's face doing that. Anyway, this though, we always like to end this first slide with something hilarious, and this is truly hilarious. Trump has announced that he is going, or it has been announced that Trump is going on his Japan trip to give the trophy to the winner of the sumo wrestling championship.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Well, the thing that's really great about it is the trophy is made in America.
Wow.
Itself.
Why is that?
I don't know, but that's pretty funny.
I hope that he does it in the same style that when he was at World Wrestling with Vince McMahon, where he like jumped in the ring and bashed him over the head with a chair. I'd like to see Trump come out in one of those
sumo things.
Yeah, one of those sumo wrestling costumes, you know, where you can kind of be your own sumo wrestler.
Well, when I was younger, I worked from 1991 to 1994, portion of the year, for a large Japanese bank in a senior role, and Bush was president, and you know, people were, and I'd been to Japan before I took the job, so I knew that there are customs that you have to respect and stuff like that. And I would get all these lectures, you know, you're very young and you're going to be dealing with very senior Japanese people. They take the protocols seriously, and you got to do this and don't do that. And I said, I know all this stuff. And then, you know, a number of years into the project, George H.W. Bush goes to a state dinner in Japan and throws up on the emperor. And I go into my controller, as it were, the firm, and I say, dude, I can do whatever I want now. My president just ralphed in the emperor's lap or whatever. You know?
And he was drinking Coca-Cola when everybody was doing toast. He was an embarrassment. I do not think he was a good president at all.
Yeah. So here is something that, you know, remember the approach that we take: red is bad, green is good, blue, we're agnostic on blue. That's just the internet link. So you see any green on this page? No. But one thing that's really interesting, I went back and I said, all right, let's use that who is thing, that who is, I think it's who is on the icon thing, to look up the date that these various links were established. Okay, and I want to spend a few minutes on this. The America India Foundation, according to the Who Is thing, they say it was established the 9th of March, 1996. I know that Bill Clinton was the first American president to do a state visit, state visits as aggressively as he did them. He did them, he was a guest in India, I think once or twice, and he hosted the Indians in Washington, D.C. Rajat Gupta, the person we've talked about, the convicted felon, who at one point was, at this moment, was the head of McKinsey, a very powerful consulting firm, centrally involved with this America India Foundation.
Where Chelsea worked.
Where Chelsea later worked, and all in on a project beginning around this time in March of '96 to create something they referred to in India as India Inc., to take it away from socialism, move it to capitalism. Here they're setting up this America India Foundation, or at least getting the link, if this website is correct, but they don't bother to actually have the earthquake that occurred in India until January of 2001. They start immediately raising money for that earthquake. They don't create a legal entity for this foundation until the 6th of March 2001. But for 5 years they have this link at a time where the technology is erupting, this is early days to be using the internet for solicitation, but you have in McKinsey, visionaries, people very adept with technology, making money in technology. They create this site, the America India Foundation, and I think it's one of the earlier examples, connected ultimately to the Clintons, where they're using this site as a guess when the real FBI investigates, not the people who pretended to investigate the Clinton Foundation. When they go back into this and they check all the ways in which money might have gone to this America India Foundation, the one in America, the one in India, the clone in India, I bet you're going to find that this is where the germ of the idea started, that you could set up the paperwork, but what you really want to do is set up a website and start soliciting off the website, and then you have the second decision to make, which is, with all the loot that you were going to show to your partners came in, if you do that, how much of that loot do you put into the foundation and how much do you steal? That's the first question. And as we talked about in the past, in a for-profit business, you can't do that. There are too many people who are interested in the profit of the business. But if you're fundamentally giving people money away, you know, and you've got a crooked this isn't even really an organization. If it's just a website, you know, it doesn't have a legal entity, it shouldn't be claiming it's a charity. It shouldn't have been raising money prior to 6 March 2001 at all. Okay? So this thing has been a fraud from the inception, and what we're going to be talking about here is a pattern and practice of, Rajat Gupta went to IIT, which is like MIT in India, is a big deal, and then he went to Harvard Business School. Bill
Clinton, sure he didn't go to ITT Tech, which is right over here on 23rd Street?
No, he has good credentials, as do most of these people around the Clintons. Many of them are Rhodes Scholars. Most of them have Ivy League degrees one way or another. So you start here, you see this in practice at a time where India is not a threat to the United States in commerce back then, but by '96 forward, you know, the outsourcing starts, The big multinational companies say, you know, we could employ people in America. F that. Let's just go to India, you know, where they don't enforce the rules, and we'll pay people a lot less, so we won't have the income growth that we saw through 2000, 2001. It'll harm the country. There's no penalties for that. You know, the government doesn't say, well, we're going to punish you for doing that. They say, globalism, it's great. Invite me to the conference. Let me make some more money when I leave as president. So that's, the next one you find is this ClintonFoundation.org. That website was established 30 September 1999. Now, why is that interesting? Why is that period interesting?
I don't know.
That's just around the time that one Hillary Clinton was formally revving up her campaign to be a senator in New York, and candidates need moolah. All right, so you have this ClintonFoundation.org established on the 30th of September 1999, but when you go to the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative missing 990 for 2004, you discover that when they're asked, you know, for this entity is asked by the IRS, do you have a website? They say, yes, we do. It's www.clintonfoundation.org. Okay, something formed on the 30th of September 1999, when there certainly was no authority to do Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative work. And this shows that the Clinton Foundation, by somewhere between the 30th of September 1999, and we've done many presentations when they start around the world trying to do HIV/AIDS projects, somewhere in there, definitely folks at this Clinton Foundation, which really was being directed, in my opinion, from Washington, D.C., where it was not registered, never registered, you know, was getting involved in these AIDS projects through a website. Okay, no legal entity formed until March 24th, 2004, and it was formed illegally by Bruce Lindsay.
So it's not legal.
Right.
It's in the wrong column.
It's an illegal
entity
exactly.
formed. Yeah.
So then you see, I remember in the old days, in fact, getting frantic calls from people saying, Charles, you better get, you know, all your domain names, charlesortel.com, .org, .this, you ought to pay whatever the math is, because you don't do that, they're going to steal your identity. I'm like, F that, I'm not doing that. So, but here you see the Clinton Presidential Center, you know, technically speaking, should not have gotten a .com. It was a charity in theory. It should have been, in my view, it should have been
well, I don't
.org.
think that matters so much anymore. They let anybody get whichever.
I know, but I mean, you're trying, again, when you have a real IRS, which maybe we have now and maybe we don't, and they land on the Clinton Foundation, they say, okay, prove to us, you demonstrate to me, I'm the IRS, you demonstrate to me and my buddies over here in the FBI that you are a foundation, and recognize that when you talk to us and you lie now, each time you lie, it's a crime. You don't want to have in your file that you set up ClintonPresidentialCenter.com on the 1st of December 2000, after the election, remember? When it was settled a bit later, but why did you set that up then, right? And why did you set up Clinton Library, Clinton Presidential Library.org on this in July after the Comey investigation?
I think at that time you had to be a nonprofit thing to get .org.
Right. Right. But I'm just saying, why did you do that on the 17th of July 2001? Because remember, in the application for federal tax exemption for the Clinton Foundation, they state that they're not going to do mass appeals. Okay, why did you need an internet address? When did you start these mass fundraising? Did it have anything to do with financing Hillary Clinton's campaign? Was anybody involved raising money for any of the library, the Presidential Center, who also might have been very much involved financing the purchase of the Chappaqua House, Terry McAuliffe, on the board of the Clinton Foundation, very active in Democratic politics, ultimately becoming chairman of the Democratic National Committee. I mean, you could weave all these threads together, which are not explained as they should have been in the IRS files. So they get ClintonPresidentialCenter.com, they get it .org, they get library.org and .com. I think purposely trying to obscure the truth of, you know, where the money was going. They say in one solicitation, send the money via the internet to ClintonLibrary.org, I'm sure to another, and who is going to figure out with all, you know, if you've got somebody who's willing to break the law, and let's say send $100,000 to Bill Clinton, but the way we're going to do it so it doesn't come back to me is we'll put it into this feeder account over here, and you'll have a bunch of techno weenies from India or wherever, you know, put in $650 in this $6.50 and this one over here for $7.25 and whatever, but it's all my money, and we're just going to hide the fact that I put the money in the feeder account. So to me, this is the kind of stuff that would make me very suspicious if I were an IRS agent interested in, let's say, balancing the budget instead of funding expensive living for former presidents and aspiring ones. So here we have this pattern and practice of establishing websites to raise money before a legal entity is formed, and that's illegal, right? You can't, if you go and you submit an application for the American India Foundation and they ask the question, are you a successor organization to anything else, and you don't tell them about this, you've lied. And you've secured that tax.
Don't tell them about the website?
About the prior activities from 9 March 1996 through the 5th of March 2001. When you were doing stuff and possibly raising money and stealing it. You're supposed to disclose that. And anybody who was doing that should not be allowed to be involved in a foundation of any kind. That person should go straight to jail, as people, they don't go straight to jail, but powerful people.
Trial, then jail.
Right. But I mean, Corinne Brown and Steve Stockman are both in jail for roughly $1 million charity frauds when they were politicians. So, I mean, here you see a bunch of examples. Then we get to the Clinton Global Initiative. This is something, and I've reviewed these files very carefully. I would encourage, people who are not watching porn and interested in investigating this thing, take a look at the application for federal tax exemption for the Clinton Global Initiative. Okay, it says flatly, it is not a successor organization to anything. Why then did a website get formed, www.clintonglobalinitiative.org, on the 15th of November 2004? Right, just as they're holding the big party in Little Rock to open the illegally financed and created Presidential Library and Research Center. This is 3 days before the opening ceremony. Who opened this? Why did they open it? Who paid for the website? Why did they pay for the website? And why does every glossy annual report that starts for 2005 through 2008 have extensive text in it about this Clinton Global Initiative, which supposedly didn't exist according to the application for federal tax exemption that's submitted not in 2009 when Obama speaks in New York, but in 2010 when he speaks again in New York. Okay, and on that application it says no prior activities, which is a bold-faced lie. Okay, there's no audit.
Why do they want to lie about that? Because the activities they were doing are not something you can report to the IRS?
Yeah, it's a bad idea. When charities are not
prior activities, theft, corruption,
wire fraud, mail fraud, political corruption, obstruction of justice, bribery.
So they just ignore that stuff and say we were doing nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing on the form for that. And so you look, this is a case in Clinton Global Initiative where they lied again about and conducted activity. A foundation is not an idea. A foundation has to be a legal entity, lawfully organized, soup to nuts. And you don't organize an entity by paying $50 to LegalZoom. I mean, you have to go and you have to create the articles. You have to get an employer identification number, articles of incorporation, bylaws, hold an organizational meeting, decide what states and countries you need to register in, fill all that information out, not just like debating the meaning of the word is. Somebody says, tell us whether you're a successor organization. You don't say, well, I did all this criminal stuff in the guise of a charity.
Chelsea came to me one time.
Right, that's right. That's not the way it works. You have, because the way the IRS is too busy to study all these things, and what they do is they say, all right, wise guy, you think you're going to get away with this? The one thing you need to remember is that if you lied on your application and we eventually find out about it,
excise tax.
Well, you're not having filed a tax return for this initial period of the 4th of September 2009 to the 31st of December 2009. If you don't file that form out correctly, we have the right, even in 2030, to go back and say, you lied.
Different kind of hammer.
Yeah, big hammer, a real hammer. The hammer, the kind of let's go through your front door at 4 o'clock in the morning kind of hammer. So they did that with the Clinton Global Initiative. They do the same thing with the Bush-Clinton-Katrina Fund. Here you see they set up this website. They did it on the 2nd of September, shortly after the hurricane, but they don't bother to set up a formal legal entity till the 4th of October. Okay, this is while George W. is president, and the Clintons are able to probably say, listen, W, dude, have we got news for you? We're in the family business together. You're not going to go after us, and we're not going to go after you, because that won't end well for either one of us. So you're just going to tell Lois Lerner to look the other way. And you just let us steal as much as we want to steal. Maybe we'll give some of what we stole to you, the Bushes, but we're taking as much as we want. And a lot of fundraising happened. It's in the public domain. I've done magazine articles about this. A lot of funds were raised in a lot of states illegally prior to the 4th of October 2005 when the legal entity is formed. You're not allowed to raise money as an organization until you exist as an organization, and it's debatable whether they even existed on the 4th of October.
It's interesting to look at it in that context, Charles, because it's like, the Clintons get involved with the Bush scam, so now Bush president's not going to go after a Clinton presidency, and now we see that happening with Obama. Maybe this meeting at Chi-Fi's house was to be like, hey, we'll let you in on this scam as long as you don't prosecute it. And then it's like a gang initiation.
Right.
You're in, and now
It's
you can't prosecute it.
It's exactly right. And then we turn to the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, which I've got to say, I'm not a huge fan of television advertising in general, but when I see, you see like, I'm making this up obviously, but whoever makes, store provided hollandaise sauce or what, something that obviously is not terribly good for you.
Coca-Cola is like sponsoring it.
You get a heart-healthy stamp from the American Heart Association. You read through what they're really doing. They're basically giving you these decals that you can put on your product if you give. And so this whole idea, the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, made no sense to me in the beginning. But the website was purchased or came into operation on the 10th of October 2005. Same deal on the Clinton Foundation website. You can see, annual report after annual report, bragging about crap they did, same thing in their 990s, even though the legal organization, was not created until the 22nd of February 2010. It was right after the Clinton-Bush Haiti Fund. This thing never filed a tax return for the so-called short period from 22 February 2010 to June 30th, 2010, when they definitely were in existence doing things. This has been a fraud from the get-go. Then you look at the C40 Large Cities Climate Leadership Entity. This thing, the website came together on the 1st of August 2007. The legal entity not till 22 November 2010. The tax filing for 2010, the short period, is factually incorrect. These are all parts of there's a close connection between Bill Clinton and every part of this. Clinton Health Access Initiative, they get that website a month before the next one down. They get that website a month before they form a legal entity. Don't file a short period return for partial year 2009. In 2009, the predecessor activities, as we've discussed, were by far and away the biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation. They lie their asses off in that application. Clinton-Bush Haiti Fund is a smaller fund. But again, they start fundraising, or they get the website the day after the hurricane, the earthquake, but they don't bother to set up a legal entity until 15 days later. And they don't do that filing properly either.
15 days is not that long.
You can't, no, that's not the point. You shouldn't be fundraising until you have an organization. It's not like, the test is very strict.
Oh, so the earthquake happens, they put up the website, start getting money that day.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, we made a lot of money, let's set up
It's kind of like movie accounting, or Hollywood accounting for anything. It's like, I can't tell you the truth about, the revenue. Box office revenues, are you kidding me? Expenses? We're not going to tell you about that. How much do you think you need? Okay, we might give you 95% of that because we like you. So, when you look at this, it's when James Dopey Comey got up there and said no serious prosecutor, would bring a case against anybody connected for mishandling Clinton, classified information. Truly, no serious, and I'm not a lawyer, but no person who would ever hope to again work for me as a lawyer would dare walk up to me, review this record, and say, this is fine. You don't understand, Charles, when you get to be a president in the United States, there's a special amendment to the super secret amendment of the Constitution that says any former president gets to do whatever the hell they want to do, for the rest of their lives, because that's the deal.
Yeah.
That ain't the deal.
Yeah.
And they've never come up with purposes for any part of this mess that are validly tax exempt. They've never made full disclosure to the IRS about what they really were doing. Had they made full disclosure about what they intended to do and ultimately did, they would never have been validly tax exempt. They never got directors for any piece of this that are truly independent. Everyone has a tie one way or another. In some cases, it's very close ties, political and business. They never filed truthful returns anywhere, with anybody, with the IRS, with any state, any foreign government. They've never bothered to get the stupid-ass auditing firm BKD to begin with, and other people who would come in behind BKD and accept their absurd work, non-compliant work, as a basis for any kind of audit. So they've never had a real audit. And yet, they've got this big deadline coming up in 2 days to either seek an extension or file a return by the 15th of May. They're still soliciting right now. As we're giving this broadcast, they're soliciting. And they operate around the world. And, and they just are very interested, I guess, in compounding their felonies. So if we go to the next slide, I don't know how closely you've looked at RICO.
Pretty closely, actually.
Okay, so there's criminal RICO.
Yes, and civil.
And civil, but let's focus on criminal for a second. So racketeering, influenced, and corrupt organizations, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They rarely use this against, the mafia.
Rarely? I thought that's what it was.
That originally was formed since 1970 for that.
Originally, yeah.
But now it says they use it against all sorts of enterprises. So RICO, criminal prosecution, all the individuals involved in a corrupt organization. Do we know of any corrupt organizations?
I know several.
Yeah, I mean, like to begin with Clinton and maybe even Obama and maybe a few Bush to throw in, as well as others. So there are 35 offenses defined. I put in red because it's bad for the Clintons. I should have put in green because it's good for us. Mail and wire fraud are included on the list. I mean, the Clinton Foundation is the mail and wire fraud initiative. I mean, that is what the Clinton Global Initiative was, sending out these invitations to people across state lines to meet in New York in protected meetings where you can concoct all these dirty deals with former and current heads of state and corrupt bankers and advisors, whatever. That's all that thing was and is. And you have to come up with 2 such offenses. Every time you use the mail to solicit across state lines a donation for a charity that does not actually legally, validly exist, that's mail fraud. When you send the money, that's wire fraud. The number, I don't know that you would need, again, I'm not a lawyer, I've never been through this, figuring out how to structure the attempted indictment and then the charges and all that, but I think there's not enough air left in the universe to keep people in prison long enough for the number of crimes that these people have been committing. And in here it says, this is drawn from the Justice site, it says, note that an enterprise is required. So you have to, the Clinton defense, let me get ahead of them a little bit, of saying, well, you're the one, Charles, who said the Clinton Foundation wasn't validly organized. If it's not validly organized, it can't be an enterprise. So we'll skate on this.
Legal definition of an enterprise.
Well, no. If you're not an enterprise, then you're admitting that you were never a foundation, so we'll get you over here for charity fraud.
Got it.
You see? So you're either going to get it
checkmate.
RICO, charity fraud. Take your pick.
Right.
You got to make a critical decision here. And remember that this is not going to be the type of conversation that happened when Peter Strzok tore himself out of the arms of his mistress and sashayed over to sit down wherever he sat down with Hillary Clinton and made sure that they went over all the questions that Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton had agreed upon in advance on the tarmac. That I'm making up. That's not going to be the way it works.
He's such a disgraceful guy, Peter Strzok.
He is. So I think you're in trouble for that. You got prison terms, 20 years, big financial penalties, and you can attach assets. Okay. So I mean, this again, we're sitting here, we're Donald Trump. People are carping about the debt and the deficit. How are we going to pay these things back? And now you've got this gigantic, not even a 9-course meal. I mean, this is like this is a gigantic banquet hall filled with food that could be used to put together and put a massive assault against these renegade criminals whose entire lives have been, wrapped up in criminality. They can't distinguish the truth from error. They can't do it. They're just, these people are a bad example. The lights need to be shined on all the people involved in this mess, and justice needs to be restored by going after these people. And the longer it takes for the Trump administration to use the criminal RICO statute against those who are involved here, the more I get worried that is Donald Trump going to walk tall the way we suggested he do?
It's been a long time we've been suggesting it.
Yeah. So if we go to the next page, this evidence to me is obvious, but when we think about the UK, the UK does have, we've been through this GCHQ and MI6, they have enormous resources around the world. Don't tell me that folks in the UK didn't notice this fraud. They've had their eyes on Bill Clinton since he was messing around in Oxford.
Yeah.
They've had a file on him since then. And just don't even try to tell me that the people and the boffins, all these people around GCHQ and MI6 and elsewhere, that they didn't notice that the Clinton Foundation, because the law, U.S. law and charity law is based on English law, right? It's the same basic principle. Don't tell me nobody in the UK noticed. These guys are supposed to be just doing this stuff in Little Rock. They're running it from D.C., an unregistered office. Hillary needs money. They're bankrupt, and they're milking this charity. And Blair said, I can do that, as a guest. I mean, he heard about this. He had an expensive wife, a big family, not a lot of savings. Suddenly he's a multimillionaire after he leaves in 2007. But Blair goes in, Blair and Clinton are buddies. Blair's the prime minister, Clinton's the president of the United States, special relationship and all that stuff. Bill leaves in disgrace. His domestic AIDS advisor, Sandra Thurman, organizes on the 29th of January 2001 something called the International AIDS Trust, which is a complete fraud. No evidence of any tax filing seeking exemption. But you got to, if you want to have a big, bold global fraud, you got to have some people associated with it who won't ask tough questions. So first you get Bill, and then you get Nelson Mandela on the 15th of July to agree to co-chair it. And while he's prime minister of the UK, Tony Blair says, "Yeah, I'm in. I'll be in on this fraud. I'll be co-chairman. I got nothing else to do. I'm just starting a war in Iraq. Why don't I jump in? This is great." And then, so you have this thing, it's getting bigger and bigger. Bruce Lindsay, a lawyer in theory, organizes this fake foundation on the 24th of March in Arkansas. On the 9th of July 2005, this entity, the International AIDS Trust, is dissolved by the state of Georgia. Anybody can see that. Still in the file, they haven't gotten rid of that. Then December 31st, 2005, they illegally claim they've merged Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative into the parent, but they didn't comply with statute and case precedent. They said they were going to liquidate it on December 31st, 2005. They never did. They never filed any paperwork that's required for it. And here you have, this is something interesting. This is the kind of stuff that these multilateral globalist organizations put together. Here's, isn't this a beautiful glossy report? Take a look at this. Evaluation report EV 668, 92 pages, August 2006. A study of Mozambique.
Oh.
Yeah. And it looks pretty actually. Pretty calm down there.
Looks pretty good and ready to go be a pirate.
Yeah. But when you look at this, on and on and on of this thing, but it talks about the Clinton Foundation. We won't find it because we don't have time, but here's an example of something. Stop for a second here. Put together, the Dutch Royal Tropical Institute gets involved, whatever that may be. This independent firm gets together, the head of office of DFID Mozambique, many people were involved looking at this program that we know began by July of 2003, where the government of Ireland funneled money into Mozambique. Here you see the Clinton Foundation. There's no such legal entity at this time. You were able to do it that quickly. That's well done. Huh. Yeah. DFIDM also played a major role in convincing the Global Fund, run by the crook Rajat Gupta, and the Clinton Foundation, run by the crook Bill Clinton, to put their funds on budget. I mean, no such thing existed, right? And here's the UK government. This is part of the UK government hiring people, spending time and energy to write this ridiculous 92-page report, and then say, "Oh, we didn't know." You know.
They left one page off.
What's that?
Well, it's 92 pages.
Oh, right. So we don't have to put that link, but we know that this was a critical moment. The UK government, if you recall, France was the biggest investor in or contributor to Unitaid. The second biggest was the UK, who had signed on eventually in theory to place £1 billion with Unitaid, the bulk of which was going to go to an entity, the Clinton Foundation, that didn't exist. So of course they needed this kind of report out August 2006 to make sure that people in the UK government didn't say, hang on, this thing's a fraud, we can't do that. It'll embarrass the French. And plus, we like to go to Geneva. We want this thing to go full speed ahead. We don't want to raise any objections because, I'm leaving as Tony Blair leaves the 27th of June, 2007. He wants to have his foundations and fly around the world, mediating disputes that he may have created in the past. Unitaid gets launched. No big money is sent until the end of the year in early 2007. Gordon Brown, I'd forgotten about Gordon Brown, that he was the idiot who sold 80% of the UK's reserves of gold at the lowest possible price. Like, I know.
Why did he do that?
This idea of buying low and selling high, that's not what I'm going to do.
Outmoded.
That's kind of ridiculous. That's alt-right. I'm going to buy high and sell low. That way I'll create tax losses to shield my future. I mean, the guy's an idiot. And anyway, so he comes in, succeeding Blair, and instead of, instead of GCHQ or MI6, I think it's a job for MI5, the internal, they need to go back into the UK papers and understand why it was folks in the UK didn't expose Unitaid for the fraud that it manifestly is and was, starting in 2007, before lots of money went illegally across the Atlantic, down into Africa, etc., to an entity, the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative, that didn't exist. Okay, this is worse than taking 4 years, or however many years it is, I guess it's 3 years, to not honor the will of the people with Brexit. I mean, here you have an obvious fraud. You have people on the ground. This DFID is a gigantic operation around the developing world. They had multiple emails, I'm sure, and memos. Some of the very smart people in the UK, somebody should have asked the basic gating question. Does this Clinton Foundation have the authority to do anything outside of a specific park in Little Rock?
Fire that guy.
What kind of question
No more
is that?
dumb questions.
No more. So this guy, Brown, comes in, however many days later, 13 days later, they set up this William J. Clinton Foundation UK, illegally. Lindsay and Kessel. Lindsay's a lawyer, Kessel's not a lawyer. Question his basic finance skill, but they lie to the company's house and they claim they have the authority to fight climate change and HIV/AIDS and other things. They had no such authority. But the UK's not going to send a team out to Little Rock, particularly in the summer. It's damn hot in the summer. So they just say, okay, sounds good to me. And then the Charity Commission in the UK, they say, all right, you know what? Bill Clinton, he's our man. Hillary Clinton's going to be the next president of the United States. We better stay on the right side. I'm just making the story up. And they allow this thing to be a charity in the UK on the 12th of March. With that in hand, the Clinton Foundation allows their license to operate the biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation to be involuntarily revoked, because there's no way they could pass muster in Massachusetts, truly explain.
They've already been thrown out, haven't
they?
Well,
19 days after, the UK said, we've done a lot of due diligence. Our due diligence involves not looking at any of the crimes. Kind of like the Comey model. We don't do any of that.
No one sensible would do that.
Nah. We just, Bill Clinton said it's the truth. You can trust him. He's never lied. He's never lost his law license for lying under oath and obstructing justice. That's not the kind of person he is. So, when you look at this, as a guess, this mess, just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Remember, the UK taxpayers got, notional commitments here of close to $2 billion to Unitaid. and a lot of which might have gone towards this fake charity, it's impossible to defend the proposition as the UK government that you know what you're doing and you deserve to be trusted looking at this crap, right? I mean,
I like the notion of defending the proposition that you know what you're doing and failing at that.
Yeah. By opening your mouth, you fail. Yeah. So this could explain why, in part, the British have been so eager to do everything they can.
The thing.
Well, to do everything they can to impede Donald Trump's attempts at making progress, because they know once you rip the scab off this wound and you start looking at what was under there, you're going to say, wait a minute, you defrauded the Princess Diana Trust, which they did in 2005. You defrauded the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, where we started, or they're crooked, or both. Okay, this is a multi-billion pound operation. Multiple governments around the world. People, you allowed this foundation to be operating, William J. Clinton Foundation UK, for years in the UK. You did nothing about it. There's other foundations, Clinton Health Access Initiative in the UK, and you did nothing? This sends a message that, if you're a globalist lefty, we're going to prosecute, we're going to let you do what you want because you're going to throw a lot of money back to the kitty, to Tony Blair's ventures and other people's ventures. And if you're on the wrong side, we get, this absurd thing that happened with Papadopoulos and the various spies, and the British are all in on that. This stuff, it's coming together, it's taking time, it's far bigger than even I thought it was in the beginning.
Wow.
So many different places, and it's clear to me that the UK has folks in the UK have a very simple choice. They need to start thinking hard about cooperating and telling the truth. Because the truth is coming out here. There are other countries that are going to be first, I think, before the UK, to ask the tough questions and trigger the types of inquiries that will lead us to a place where we start seeing all these emails. Because these emails and memoranda and wire transfer receipts and after action reports and all these government grants, they're out there in the public domain. Probably Hammer had them. So they're there, and you can't. This has been going on for over 20 years. You cannot make all this stuff go away, as is evidenced by their failures to bleach bit everything.
Yeah.
It's coming out. Lots of people have it. People have insurance copies as a bet that they shouldn't have, and you better start preparing for the truth and the shitstorm that's coming here. and if you want to be, it's not like, the UK is going to be able to go it alone under the far left-leaning next prime minister that they're going to have. If they get that far left guy in as a Labour government, with the problems they have with the Sharia law issues and elsewhere, capital is going to leave that country so fast. So they need us a lot more than we need them at this point, and we should help them. But we're not going to help. I don't know the Trump people, but I can't imagine Donald Trump saying, "Oh yeah, these same people who hose-bagged me starting in 2015. They want to give a favor let me give them favors because they've been hose-bagging me." That's not in art of the deal.
No.
That's in art of the chump. Yeah. So quickly, these are. I'm sorry, I did this at the end. The next page. I'm going to explain this very quickly, and people can go over it at their leisure. But when we hear about from Nancy Pelosi about crumbs, and we hear about Bernie Sanders about millionaires and billionaires, this information is taken from what's called the mid-year survey of it's called the Consumer Expenditure Survey, and I provide at the bottom links to the source material. But what I did here is it's very interesting information. When we had a lot more time, we'd spend more time on it. We don't have that much time. This takes the bottom 10%, next, and tells you what their average total income they call it consumer unit. It's akin to household. There's slight variations. There are 127.7 million, let's call them households. This divides the income after tax up of the various households. And it shows you that the top 10% make $15,000 a month after tax, okay, on average. That includes Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Zuckerberg and the hedge fund multimillionaires, okay? That's a lot of money, $15,000 a month after tax, But when we think about it, it's not that much money, right?
Well,
and that's the mean. So if you take the hedge fund guys out,
yeah.
you take the high earners out, that number is
Yeah,
going to
it
be
goes down.
going to go down a lot. So what you see here, this is you know, how they presented it first, but they're sneaky. Okay, what they don't tell you is that down here, you have to ferret it out. In these type of households down here where they're making $6,000 after tax, there can be as many as, let's say, 3 or more people in the household, but only one of them works for half the year, right? So this is a case of, these are households where it could be an elderly couple or elderly person where, you know, they're only working for half the year, right? And so, of course, whereas up here, the top earners they've got 2.1 people somehow in these families, probably the husband, the wife, and a kid during the summer are working. So you can't look at this math the way they present it to determine, you know, how much more money are the rich making than the poor. Here I take the ratio of the high, 180,930, to the second lowest group, because this is meaningless basically down here from a mathematical standpoint. So here you would look at this and say, oh, this is so unfair. The people at the top are making households are making 11 times what the people at the bottom. 12 under Obama, 11 rising to 12, and it drops to Trump. It goes down to 11 and then back to 11 and a half. Okay, so this is not a tale. This is not millionaires and billionaires dominating the economy. Okay, this is actually, I would argue, this is the richest country on earth by far in income and wealth. You see distributions, you would see, if you could get the information, distributions in places like Brazil, certain smaller countries in Africa, you'd see very different numbers than this. Okay, in most of sub-Saharan Africa, people don't make on average anywhere near 6,000 after tax per year.
It'd be like $50.
Yeah, it'd be a lot less. So this is, at first blush, even skewed to present an inequality case. This is not as bad as it would seem. And I adjust it in the next slide, and it's presto changeo. What I do is I adjust this to look at what the real rates are per earner. Okay, and here you see that the people in the top group here are making roughly $8,000 a month after tax. That's not all that much money. Okay, that's a lot less than a millionaire would make after tax, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is the mean, including the millionaires and billionaires. Okay, and then you take out the bottom one because it's not as relevant. And look at this. You know, down here, most people are making, you know, $33,000 a month after tax. The rich are making $8,000 a month after tax. That's not a gigantic difference, right? And then ask yourself, who's in this rich category? Government workers. Many of the government workers, there's a story, Andrew Cuomo is accusing the MTA of thievery.
How so?
Because maintenance workers are making with overtime almost $500,000 a year. And when we look at this, if this is government data,
That does seem like a little bit, it's not thievery, it's incompetence.
It's absurd. You know, when you look at, if these numbers are accurate, which maybe they're not, okay? But the US government, talking about the Consumer Expenditure Survey, says it is the most accurate survey they produce. Maybe it's still shit, but, you know, but it's their numbers.
All the other surveys are totally inaccurate, right. So this one is, you know, right. The best of the worst.
But we look at this and we say, you know, it's basically stuck on, you know, the top families are making, you know, per earner, the people earning money in these units are making less than 3 times what the poorest people are making. And that is not a tale of staggering inequality. To me, that's you know, I'm surprised.
What about, Charles, all these reports we see where the top, you know, 10 richest guys in the world have as much money as like 50% of the rest of the world?
Okay, because, all right. So
it's just such a small statistic.
Yeah, no, the marking system, this is a lot like in the old days of business. You had the income statement, the cash flow statement, the balance sheet, but you didn't have a cash flow statement. The marking system for understanding economic progress started at a time when there was very little financial wealth. Then, back in 1933 or whatever, the financial wealth was definitely concentrated in a very limited number of families, and we're in the beginning of the worst, you know, long-standing depression we've ever had in our history. The system that was devised and it still exists this way, doesn't count the balance sheets of households. And the reality is that, you know, there are people, it's like the, you know, the old cartoons and stuff, you know, the people who take, they're told that, you know, they're going to get $5, and so they go and they borrow 50, and they spend, you know, 49 of it, or all 50 of it, and now they're 45, you know, they're 50 in debt. And then the other person, you know, gets the 5 and spends 50 cents and has $4.50. I mean, there are different types of people, different ways of living your life. And people who are raised in a family where you're frugal, where you see the value of, you know, how difficult it is to hang on to wealth, you know, they have one approach. And you encourage that kind of life learning and habits. Many people, I know it's, for example, and you would know more about this than I, but in the Jewish faith, people, when they get bar mitzvah and whatever, they get a large gift, typically, I mean, meaningful gifts of money at age 13 or 14 or whatever the age is. You start saving at 14, you're going to have a very large amount of money compared to somebody who wakes up at age 45 and says, you know, I better start saving. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's not a question of, it has nothing to do with intelligence, it has nothing to do with ethnicity, it has no, or religion or anything else. It's just, if you spend more money than you make,
you're broke.
You're broke.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
pretty simple math.
It's that simple. And, you know, it's the same idiot who brought us Obamacare, Gruber. You know, it is probably, and Pelosi are probably, you know, the way America is going to be rich is we're just going to convince all Americans to, you know, borrow obscene amounts of money to go study absurd things at expensive colleges, you know, and think that the world owes them a living for the rest of their life, and they can spend more than they ever made, run up credit card debt. That's not the way to live.
We could study the history of beer and Native American recipes.
Right, exactly.
Professor Elizabeth Warren.
Exactly, the genius.
Pocahontas.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So with that, I promise to go easy on the people who don't like numbers, but when we start talking inequality in America, I mean, in America today, even under Obama, the average person who wanted to roll his or her sleeves up and get to work and pick something that where their skills, their natural skills, can be cultivated to their advantage. People who wanted to work hard did well. People who sit around and complain and decide that what they want to do is you know, take away your money or my money or somebody else's money because they know how to allocate things better than you do, having been a part-time waitress, you know, that, not to pick on that poor young lady, but I mean,
she's been a little bit low key lately.
I think so. That's what happens when a mallet comes
told
out.
Her to shut up.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, so I think progress has been slow, but progress is coming. I would be watching carefully what's going on around the world in countries where governments have given money to these Clinton frauds.
It's everywhere.
But at the big governments, UK, France, New Zealand, Australia, Norway, Sweden, Holland, you know, Spain. Many of these countries are waking up and are not liking what they're hearing. Yeah. Nobody wants to be played the fool forever, and especially not for a family that will never have a senior person in power again in the next 100 years, is my guess.
Yeah. Chelsea Clinton not going to make it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
She's too busy running frauds in laundromats. I mean, something in laundromats.
Well, Charles, it was another great presentation, rather succinct today.
Tried to keep it short.
Hour 53. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the flexibility in doing Sunday with Charles on Monday. I hope people's hearts are filled with joy to see you here on YouTube.
And you.
And me, of course, and I hope that people will become sponsors of the show by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. If the number of people emailing me when we're not on the air were equal to the people sponsoring, I think the coffers would be exploding. So for real, if people are watching the show regularly, if you're not a sponsor, it's so important that you become a sponsor. You can go to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And there are no ads on the show. This is the only way that I monetize the program. We're coming up on year 3 pretty soon. So, you know, this is a startup business, crowdsource the truth, and we've got to keep the programs coming. So, Charles, thank you for another great episode. Thanks to all the generous Patreon sponsors. Got another episode of Unseen Libya coming tonight. We've adjusted the schedule. I think the Moriartys wanted it to be a little bit kind of after dinner. So 8:30 tonight. Is it 8:30? Yeah, 7:30 Texas, 8:30 Eastern. We'll be back. I'll see everybody then. Thanks for watching.